Part of Locked On Sports Atlanta on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Hawks postcast, your home for the best Atlanta Hawks talk. It's local insight you can't get anywhere but right here at Locked On. I'm your host, Tenitra Batiste. Alongside me is DeShaun Tate. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. So visit FanDuel.com to get started. And the Locked On Hawks postcast is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So the Hawks are back home for the first of two matchups in 3 days against the Wizards, and a double-double didn't pay dividends because perimeter defense was the death of the Hawks once again. So Tate, you said your take on this Hawks-Wizards game is you can learn today because apparently you didn't learn last season.
No, definitely didn't learn. Hawks fans, do you remember that 30-point shellacking that the Washington Wizards gave us on last year? Let me tell you something. You would think that I'd be proud to wear this hat. I expected that I would be proud to wear this hat. I woke up this morning and been wearing it all day. Much of a good reason, Tenitra, because of the fact that I haven't shaved my head all freaking week. But I'm so hot at this team. That I really don't care just that much. I am that hot. When you start talking about 9 turnovers, okay, in the third quarter alone, unforced turnovers, 10 turnovers in 1 quarter alone.
In 1 quarter.
Unacceptable. I'm placing all the blame. And y'all know usually I don't do this. First of all, before y'all even come in here on the comments and start talking about, oh, it ain't his fault, and oh, the injuries, and oh, it's only the 5th game of the season. Don't want to hear it. You prided yourself in everything, all the moves you made, everything was primarily based around how much better this defense was going to be. I get it. It's early. All these guys with length and athleticism, we're going to trying to get stops, how important that is, and all this other stuff that just sounds cute. You don't let Washington do this. My motto, always and forever, for the last, I don't know how long when it comes to this team, has always and forever, Tenitra, been about beat the people you're supposed to beat and just be competitive against the others. You did not beat the team you were supposed to beat. I don't want to hear nothing about number 1 versus number 2 in terms of draft. None of that stuff. It's on number 11. You got to be better. You are the leader of this team. Forget about what he shot. I can't even think that high, that if I told you what those numbers were and even thought about uttering and repeating them, I don't think everybody want to see what I have for dinner tonight. Let me tell you something, Tenitra. Another thing I don't want to hear about for coming from Trae Young on tonight. I don't want to hear I gotta be better and I will be better. The same thing that we keep hearing every time there's a bad game. I hope that this isn't being disingenuous, Tenitra, and forgive me because I know I'm getting long-winded. I'm just a little bit peed off right now. I'm just being really transparent. And this guy, as you know, Tenitra, since 2008 has always been the guy that's been an advocate for Trae. Even when people talk about Luka and this one and that one and so on and so forth, when it's your turn to deserve it, it's your turn this time. There's nobody else to point a finger to. All right, wins are already expected to be hard to come by. It's already a minimal margin for error when it comes to this team. Everybody else appeared to have given the max effort. I'm irate right now. It's very unacceptable. And it's just something that when you start talking about going into that game in 48 hours from now, this got to be the big payback, and I mean big.
Yeah, and I think you make a great point about Trae Young because as much as it is his 208th double-double, when you dig down into the numbers, you don't really want to see a 14.13 assist night from Trae Young. That's not the double-double you want to see. What you want to see is more like 24 points and like, okay, we'll take the 10 rebounds, but at least 10 more points of productivity, because when you're going to the inside, let's start there. 2 of 15 from the field, 2 of 10 from 3. Now, you were one of the bright spots from the free throw line because that was also a hot mess from these Hawks tonight. But ultimately speaking, and we'll talk about that in a second too, but ultimately speaking, yes, when a game like this is a back and forth, right? and then all of a sudden that other team starts taking over in the third quarter, then you have to take over the game, because unless I miss something, I believe you're the best player on the court. And that goes across both teams. So if you're the best player on the court, you got to show it and then let everybody else follow your lead. And speaking of Trae, and really the entire team. So when I look at this holistically, I think, okay, great. Jalen Johnson had a double-double. I liked his double-double a little bit better, and he was even leaning towards a triple-double, 29 points, 12 rebounds, 7 assists, a steal, and a block. That's my kind of triple-double almost, right? And then you look at Larry Nance Jr., first time that he got into a game for these Hawks in the regular season, and he gets 15 points, 3 rebounds, 4 assists, a couple steals, and a block. That's a good look as well. I like that. And for the most part, when I look down the scoring line, Clint Capella, I thought, had a pretty decent night as well. And of course, Garrison Matthews went off. He was another one who went off on the bench. And you and I talk about that bench all the time. So getting that from Larry Nance Jr., getting that from Garrison Matthews, that was good, except DeShaun, that it didn't matter in the end, because 129 to 119, and you getting another L, and an L against the Washington Wizards when you played your butts off against the Thunder for about 3 quarters. So clearly, to me, that's a team who should have come back and beaten them with no problem. But that's not what happened. And once again, like I said when we started the show, it's the same issue, that pesky perimeter defense. And Jalen Johnson did what he could. Dyson Daniels did what he could. But at the end of the day, there's only so much that 2 players can do if a whole darn squad is coming at you and getting like a 48% clip from the perimeter. And then you're not doing the things that you could do to offset that, right? Because when I look at it, you could do something like, I don't know, maybe not turn the ball over and give them 22 points off those turnovers. That's a starting point. Maybe you can kind of sort of hit your free throws as opposed to 72% free throw shooting. That we find 2, 4, 6, 10 points all over the place that would have made this a different conversation. And in this league, when teams get hot from the 3, that means you can't make any mistakes in any other area if your 3 ball is just solid. And theirs was. Hawks 3 ball tonight, 37% from deep. But when that other team's shooting 48% from deep, everything else that you just talked about, DeShaun, everything that I've talked about, all of it has to be operating at a higher level to offset the fact that your 3s aren't going down at the clip that theirs are.
Well, that's also the reason, Tenitra, and you made some very, very good points, some stuff that I hadn't even seen on tonight. But that's why another reason why I feel the exact same way that I do about Trae on tonight, because of the simple fact that a lot of what the other guys gave you were just kind of bonuses. We start talking about Matthews in addition to Clint Capella, who, by the way, did not rebound very well. I think he only had 4 or 5 rebounds on tonight. So that's his something that's going to be worked on. But his points, his scoring was there. You're not typically going to get him and Garrison Matthews to be combining for 30 points. You can't rely on Dyson Daniels to give you the exact same thing that he's been giving you for the last 3 games in double digits, because it's just inevitably he's going to have a bad night. You can't be relying on guys like Larry Nance to have, 15 points. That's also a bonus. I mean, it also got to a point where you start realizing and calculating some of the games that these players have been having against the Hawks, where it wasn't just tonight. This goes all the way back to game 1, 36 points for Cam Thomas. This goes all the way back to the second game of the season against Charlotte, where you got LaMelo Ball going off for 34. You got SGA, who I know people want to give a pass to because he's the MVP, but don't forget perimeter defense people, 35 points for them in a blowout win. So now you factor in, you got LSU, Light Skin United, between Jordan Poole and Kyle Kuzma out there combining for over 50 points together. We always talk about the hello, my name is player, right? The guy that just
random role player.
Which guy was that tonight? Was that Corey Kispert? Was that Bub Carrington? Was that Bilal Coulibaly? You can choose from multiple guys. I'm just not happy about it at all. I know that we're up against it and we got to go to a break, but if you can't see the smoke coming out of my nose, you got to be blind.
But you know what? If I can just say this real quick, and maybe we can come back to the other side because you made some good points. So we're going to come back and we want to talk a little bit more about that perimeter defense and also those random role players because we can't see those things keep happening. So there are a couple of other points we want to make on the other side. This episode of our Locked On Hawks postcast is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action this week with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, maybe you got a hunch that the Steelers will outlast the Giants, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL and America's #1 sportsbook. So, DeShaun, I wanted to go back to something that you said because I wanted to dig just a little bit deeper into a point that you made. Now, you called out at least 3, if not 4, random role players, right? These are the players, just in case for you guys who are new to the Locked On Hawks postcast, these are the guys that DeShaun and I feel always come out of nowhere for the other team. And we don't get a random role player typically from the Hawks, although you got 2 tonight, but typically you don't get the same thing as these guys who just come out of nowhere, shoot out of their mind, whether that's from the perimeter or inside, but mostly it's from the perimeter. And it just makes us scratch our heads, right? So when I look back at the box score, because you mentioned Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, which we knew at some point he was going to break out in that game against the Thunder. But when you look down at the box score and you start seeing everybody in their rotation, all the random role players except like 2 guys got points. And all of those guys got rebounds. So those guys were playing at both ends of the court, right? And then also you look at the perimeter shooting from the Thunder team. And I say that because they're one of those teams where it didn't start very well for them, but they caught fire. And then, of course, they did what they were supposed to do, which was at the free throw line. They started going off. And then you know what happened. Inside, they just absolutely had a field day. And I'm sorry, it was actually 40%. So they got progressively better from the perimeter. So I just wanted to make that point clear that DeShaun and I aren't just talking about the game tonight. We're talking about something that we've already seen as a trend that we don't like because it's a trend from last season. And you kind of hope that with the length that this team has, if you will, that they can go out there on the perimeter and at least contest those shots a little bit more than they do. And not just contest, but actually make these guys some kind of way miss. And I just felt like at the end of the second quarter, something was feeling like, I don't know about this. This game is getting a little too close for comfort. And I'm worried about the third quarter because remember, DeShaun, I told you about this a couple nights ago. I said one thing that bothered me about the Hawks, this is the second time for me that I saw it in person, where they take their foot off the gas. They go full throttle in the first quarter. They come out like hard, take an 11-point lead like they did tonight. Then they took their foot off the brake in the second quarter, but then they picked it back up and they regained the 11-point lead. But then they took their foot off the gas for just about the whole third quarter. That can't happen. That's for teams like the Oklahoma City Thunder, the Dallas Mavericks, or if you want to talk about the Eastern Conference, that's for teams like the Boston Celtics or maybe the New York Knicks or the Sixers. In other words, the teams that are at the top of the conference, respectively. You're building towards that. And and one way to build towards that is just for you to do the little things, like DeShaun said, cannot make this point enough that you gotta beat the teams that you should beat, because these are the things that come back to haunt you should you be in a position where you can get back into the play-in tournament, but you don't control your own fate in that tournament.
I think in some instances too, Tenitra, when I'm looking at tonight's game, and I could be completely wrong because I know that you were down there and maybe you could feel the energy and all this other kind of stuff a lot better and just more than I could from long distance. But I don't know how much focus really was on this whole number one versus number two pick thing and all the talk. I can only imagine what it was like inside of the arena. I just feel like, and maybe not even necessarily from this team, but there are some instances where I think sometimes that the minds and the eyes can be clouded, or even for fans who are paying way too much attention to things that really don't matter,
Yeah.
paying so much attention to the number one pick versus the number two pick and that matchup and all this, when in reality, a lot of the times, and the players will even tell you, especially in some of those post-game press conferences where the fans are the ones that bring them through. Washington quieted the fans on tonight, it feels like. And I can only hear so much of that from such a long, many miles away. I know that you were there, so I'm curious to know what your take was necessarily of that. But I can only imagine how much of the conversation was really about something that was really taking the fan base away from just really being on top of things, until we got to a point where it's like, oh my God, Washington is really still in this game. Like, we're really still letting them hang around. You just mentioned something that you've been talking about their inconsistencies of being up and then being down and then being up and being down, something they can't afford to do. What have I also been saying since last season? The only thing that we see from this team consistently is that they are consistently inconsistent. And it looks like they're picking right back up where they left off in those regards.
Yeah, and that's disappointing because you'd given them kudos a couple nights ago about developing good habits. And so you hate to see those bad habits kind of creep up. And again, we know that this is a very early return, right? And we know that maybe it's some of those bad habits, they're hard to kill, but you need to kill them fast, because what you don't want to do is have that linger on and then all of a sudden it remains your identity for this season. That's not something that you want. But I do have to say this, in all fairness, no Bogey. Bogdan Bogdanovic was out with right hamstring tendinopathy. No Onyeka Okongwu, injury management because of his left big toe. No DeAndre Hunter, again, because of right knee inflammation. Nor Kobe Buffkin, right shoulder injury. And B. Krejci went down for the night with a right adductor injury. So, I mean, the Hawks are feeling it, but in all honesty, do you still give any credence to the thought that this would have been a game the Hawks would have needed those players in, or would have needed them to suit up tonight just to win?
Tenitra, the Wizards was one of the worst teams in the NBA last year, alongside of the Detroit Pistons, Charlotte Hornets, so on and so forth. You have to step on their necks and leave them there. Like, there's only so many teams that you're realistically going to be able to do that this season too. And I get it, the injury bug and whatever else, what have you. I feel my own way about some of those guys maybe not participating in tonight's game that I feel like should be able to give it a go. Sounds easy from the lazy boy, and I get that part too. I really do, because I get it, right? In that same breath, you just still have a certain expectation. I feel like if you're going, long as you're fighting and you're doing it with pride. But some of this, I feel like they kind of underestimate. I'm seeing guys out there shooting jump shots with nobody running out at them and closing out on shooters, not even two arms lengths away from them when guys are pulling up from a jump shot, nobody around them. I mean, it's those are the unacceptable things. And when you start seeing stuff like that, where guys just look like that they're just, shooting in the gym all by themselves, guys not breaking a sweat, it kind of feels like the Hawks kind of underestimated this team. But you have to give credit to the Washington Wizards, who came in here and just honestly took the crowd out of it, took the team out of it, just really focused on, the task at hand, which was to add a number to the left side of the result column. They came in here, they did that, and you better believe that as much as we were looking forward to number one versus number two in favor of Risacher, you better believe that their home crowd is going to be looking forward to the exact same matchup, but in favor of Alexander Sarr. Believe that.
Exactly. And this crowd for the Hawks, granted, it's always tough on a Monday night, but if I'm being honest, you had to give them something to cheer for. And you did in the first quarter, and a part of the second quarter where I saw players consistently 3 Hawks under the basket to make sure that the Wizards didn't have an opportunity for second chance points. Just didn't see it enough and didn't see it for 4 quarters. And then Big O says, I think the offense is hurting us more than the defense. We can't capitalize offensively after making good plays on defense. That's a great point as well, because again, that's something that the Washington Wizards were able to do, but not something that we saw necessarily from the Hawks. And that's a disappointing thing as well. But one more thing before we wrap up, we know that it's only 5 games in, but ultimately speaking, this injury report is already filling up, and it is scary because you know what this team went through with injuries last year. I mean, it was an absolute infirmary pretty much for the entirety of the season. I think it was until January or February. That was the first time that we actually saw the true starting 5 for the Hawks. It was that bad. So now, and excuse me, it's 4 games because they played Brooklyn, Charlotte, Oklahoma City, and Washington. So you've got those 4 games under your belt. But look how many injuries we talked about tonight. I mean, are you concerned that they're starting to mount already?
Not to just random guys either. We're
No,
not talking about just beat
not talking
Crazy
about
or
the bench.
Garrison Matthews. We're talking about DeAndre Hunter. We still haven't seen Bogey yet. Onyeka Okongwu. I mean, how much more critical can it be than to not be able to have a primary backup point guard? Kobe Buffkin is in that conversation as he's still trying to grow. These are the type of games that kind of brings him along in learning experience on the floor in the event that Trae Young is not having a good game and needs to take a seat, let somebody else come in there. And the last thing I'll say about this, and I know that we're kind of on the injury thing, and I know we're up against it, so let's go to the break. But I feel my own way, even on the behalf of the coaching staff. I know they didn't have any timeouts, but you got to have something drawn up in the event of a really close and tight game. Going to Trae Young and throwing up a double pump fade, side step 3-pointer at the buzzer, swing it to somebody and give somebody else a chance, because the way you've been shooting tonight, I didn't have a good feeling.
Indeed. But there was one thing that made me happy about tonight, and we'll talk about it in what's next. This episode of our Locked On Hawks postcast is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. They also have priority Game Time Picks. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. And the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. And Game Time's ticket coverage means your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Now, terms do apply. So again, create that account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download the Game Time app right after you wrap up Locked On Hawks postcast, because what time is it? It is game time. So, if you guys who've been rocking with us from day one, if you know us, you know that we are always trying to still find the positive in something. So I did have one positive thing that happened that made me so happy. So today I had like a gazillion things to do. So normally I'll get to the arena anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half early, right? Today, got there just 45 minutes early and was like, darn, I can't, beg, plead, and borrow for somebody to give me a hair of the hawk. Because, sometimes we as media, we don't get something like the t-shirts, the cool t-shirts, or some of the giveaways or whatever. And today, literally, I walk in, get through security, and our PR team for the Hawks literally said, "Here, Tenitra.
You gotta hear it."
I am so excited, man. And he's like really sturdy because okay, I'm a little clumsy, guys. And all of my bobbleheads except Ryan Howard have bitten the dust. Like either I've taken their head off or I can't find their baseball bat or something. But this bad boy right here, Harry, he's sturdy. And you know why? It's because he's just the best. He's absolute best mascot in all of the NBA. And I don't say that lightly because he actually has been awarded best mascot in the NBA. So I am super glad. That made me happy. That at least made me walk in the arena and walk out of the arena with some joy. But I don't know about you, DeShaun. Like, I see, you got a little Harry behind you as a part of your set. But yeah, I mean, do you get excited like about little things like that as a media person?
Of course, all the little things, whether it be the hats or, like you said, the
Yes.
bobbleheads and all the little things, T-shirts and just really cool items. I think you got a jersey last year. That's like the
Yes.
real deal. Not no iron-on letters and
No.
numbers. Like that's the
Nope.
stitch.
It's a Dre
That's the
Hunter
real
signed
deal.
jersey.
Like, nah,
Yes.
so I think that's awesome. And shout out to the PR staff and everybody
Yes.
else over there that's able to make things like that happen. I got something pretty cool myself. It's not nearly as cute as the one that you got. Well, this is my Trae Young one, so we're gonna put that down just for tonight. But I got a really interesting fun little Christmas present last Christmas
Oh, sweet.
from Breslin, of course.
Yes.
And I got my own little DeShaun Tate with the basketball and a little
Super cool.
Yeah, just something a little bit
Super
different. A
cool.
little different. So I'm having a lot of fun. Let's cover back up that Trae Young one over there. Push it towards the back. Well, maybe we can bring him back.
We'll bring you back Wednesday night. We want to bring you back Wednesday night because if DeShaun puts you back in your front and center place where you have been the entirety of this Locked On Hawks postcast dating back to last year, that means that Trae Young said, I'm not doing back-to-back subpar games. And normally he doesn't. And in his defense, we have all said that in the first 3 games, even in the loss to the Thunder, Trae Young has started the season much faster and much better. He looks like he has his touch back. So you just really want to give him a shout. And hopefully this is just a one-off type game for him and his touch comes back and he gets back to being comfortable with, hey, just take control. Like if the game, go inside, get the foul, keep shooting until, I understand with the assist when the shot's not going down, but somehow you got to figure out how to take over that game because you really are the best player on the court. You really were tonight. Now, like we said, Hawks go back on the road. They
Big
take
payback
on the Wizards again. I know, right? So what can they do to reverse course come Wednesday and allow this postcast to go back to its happy place?
Be out for blood.
Yes.
Remember this. You don't want to be having another one of these conversations. Everybody needs to be staying up late night, and looking at this exact thing. Everybody, for all the way to the guy on the bench who knows he's not even going to get in the game. And just really getting into your bag in terms of the film and taking it personal. Have some pride, because that's ultimately what it's all about. None of these, cute handshakes coming out of the warm-ups and all of these, little different, shaking hands and kissing babies and all this other type of stuff. Take this one personal because that's the Washington Wizards over there, for crying out loud. And it's not every time you're going to have a chance to be able to get a second crack at them right away. You get that opportunity. Right. Cutting down on the turnovers, taking care of the basketball, doing the little things, getting on the ground after every loose ball. Not one single rebound should fall and hit the floor. Everything should be sending all the guys at the glass and just running, rim running. And I remember growing up as a kid, and when we used to mess up in games like that, and coaches used to tell us, hey, y'all gonna run until we get tired, and we're not running. So it's just those little things, the simplest things. I know I'm hard on Trae, but that's because I like Trae as much as I do, and my expectations are high. But you have to be better than you were. And I'm not erasing the things that he did before tonight's game, but it's because you are that good of a player that these things in year number, where are we at now? Are we at 6 or 7 or somewhere around that range?
Yeah.
You got to erase these moments. These moments can't be had. So that's just the way I'm feeling about it. Can't wait until the next 48 hours until we can do this again. And hopefully DeShaun Tate will be in a much better mood.
Exactly. And I would say I want to see the entirety of this team's performance not wasted. I feel like Larry Nance Jr.'s performance coming off the bench, wasted. Garrison Matthews hitting threes for you when you needed him most, wasted. Jalen Johnson having a career high night in points, 29, wasted. Let's not waste these things because you turn over the ball and you allow the other team, once you turn it over, you allow the other team to actually score points. Let's not do that. Let's not see you get to the free throw line where hey, these are free points. This is the charity stripe. That's why they kind of call it free points in the charity stripe.
Right.
Take advantage of it, because again, when you look back at the box score and you see 129 to 119, how many points did you leave at the charity stripe that we don't want to see you leave there come Wednesday? Locked On Sports Atlanta is the #1 place to hang out after every game. Remember to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And for more on the Hawks, check out Locked On Hawks with our guy, Brad Rowland. We'll see you next time.